Welcome once again to the Artistry Podcast. I'm Jay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Welcome once again to the Artistry Podcast. I'm Sev.
And I'm Jay.
We wanted to talk about education on this episode. Both me and Jay didn't really go through the traditional path of getting a degree and a job, so I wondered how many of you think the way we do. As usual, you'll find detailed information in the description down below.
Yeah, I mean, I quit university midway, and personally, those years were torment for me. I fundamentally think that the scripted path of education is not for everyone. And not all people are the same. I think different paths should be encouraged rather than shamed. I mean, being younger, I had a feeling that if I didn't finish university, I'd be worthless. And I think I got this feeling from just the way society works and what people say to you. I don't think anyone told me that specifically, but it's just the questions people ask. Oh, which university did you choose, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think that would the university nowadays is what's considered normal, and not a big fan of it. I think there should be other paths, other options, valid options.
Yeah.
And I do feel like this topic will just be loads of rants on the negative sides of education from me.
Yeah, because I feel like both of us have a very similar opinion to education. Like you said, we weren't the traditional, like both our degrees were somewhat, like I was in arts, I was in design actually. And basically what I was taught is they just told me to repeat stuff and that's probably what we're going to be hammering on later. But for the sake of argument, for a conversation, and maybe even for the listeners to to have their voices in, I'm going to try and play the devil's advocate to your counter your topics, because I do feel like you have some good points, and you're probably more eloquent at speaking them than I am.
Interesting. Sounds like somebody was into some club in high school or something, like a debate club or something.
And I was.
Is that the case? Oh, okay. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Right. So on my end, I do wonder what you guys think of the standardized system these days. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it just whatever? Do you care at all or not? Is this a waste of a podcast on you? Let us know in the comments. And yeah, I quit university, but I think that had I taken a gap year or two, perhaps I would have come back and gotten into university, in studying something I really wanted with a purpose, or just not gone at all and not wasted that time, or spent that time. Let's not use the word waste. I mean, of course, you still learn some things, and
sure,
meet people,
and you gain like knowledge in acquaintances, which is what I mostly got from my university, is the people I was there with. I think that was my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, precisely. So it's not wasted. Yeah, let's say spent. I would have spent my time differently. So yeah, what's your story, Seth? Would you paint just a general picture, like in a few words?
Yeah. Before I go though, can you tell me what did you actually study in university?
Oh yeah, I was in. Okay, I guess technically I got into electrical engineering, and then after the first year or mid-semester, I forgot, I changed to computer engineering, and that was 7 years, a black hole. Yeah, it's just nothing happening. I actually got through, I think I got about half, maybe 2/3 of my credits. And funnily enough, I think I got all of my math subjects. So non-computer engineering subjects, I got all of them, I think. And then I didn't do the computer engineering. But also because in the first year, you just do general engineering. And then after that, you're more focused on actual programming and software and all that kind of stuff. But another reason is that engineering subjects, you just do your own thing. There are no group projects. You just work alone. You studied, you do the tests, and then the computer engineering parts were a lot of group projects, and I had a lot of trouble with that, just working with people in general.
But you feel like that's a problem of the system, or is that like a more personal problem? Maybe you just don't work well with people.
It was a bit of a personal problem. I think mostly because I wouldn't be able to tell people to fuck off, pretty much, because at one point I had, dude, this is very difficult for me. We're already going on a tangent,
Don't
starting
worry.
off the podcast. But yeah, like this was a very difficult thing for me to do. This was like by the end before I quit, and I was already like, with the system. But I had one subject, and these two dudes, they didn't do anything. God damn it, I hated them, and I met them just for the project. And this is another thing. Like you have, like if you started doing projects since the first year, you have your group of people. You always work with them, but otherwise you're kind of left behind, and then you're left with these random people who don't want to do shit, anything. And
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's my experience. I don't know. It maybe I wasn't very sociable. Maybe
There's
people are.
always yeah, there's always people that who go to university because they don't want to start the workforce. They don't want to enter the workforce already. Like they want to smooch
Mm,
off because
the
university is
teat.
basically adult responsibility light. You have
Mm,
you have pretend responsibilities, which is to you have some more financial responsibilities. You have some more responsibilities to making your own food, like your own schedules, and all that feels very adult. But you have none of the actual responsibilities of finances and work and stuff that with consequences
right.
of
Yeah.
going to poverty. So people they like the comfort of university and or school, and they stay there forever, and they don't actually commit to learning.
Mm.
I also hated that.
I mean, yeah, I can see that for sure. But yeah, so there were these two guys, and they didn't do anything, and I think I was repeating this subject by the third time,
Mhm.
and this meant that I knew it pretty well already. I didn't really need them. In the end, this was like the subject I had the best grade and the best project I had
Mhm.
because I did it alone in the end. But yeah, but my teacher, I had like a mentor. They assign you sort of a tutor, a mentor who's a teacher to just keep track of you and see how you're doing. And he told me, like, listen, if they're not doing anything, just get rid of them. And this
Mhm.
was very strange for me because a lot of teachers tried to avoid having people do individual groups.
Yeah,
And this teacher said, "No, dude, yeah, it's
just do
more
you.
work for me." No, but he said, like, "Yeah, I understand because teachers don't want to have extra work because that's more projects to grade. But dude, if it's bad for you, get rid of them." And
Mhm.
so I got rid of him, and that was the best decision I had. And they didn't even get rid of him properly because I told them, dude, like, look, we're behind. Be here on this day at this time. Deal? They said, yeah, deal. They didn't appear. So I sent an email to them, dude, this group is done. And then I sent this email as a CC to the teacher of the subject, and I
Mhm.
never heard from them.
Oh
But
damn,
yeah, in the end, I ended, yeah, screw them. So
making friends.
yeah, that was a tangent, side rant. Yeah, what are we
Mhm.
talking about again today?
No, that is because I feel like your teacher was pretty good there. The teacher kind of followed your progress, kind of gave you advice on what to do. It was involved, which I
Yeah.
think is there's a more the teachers, and I think you're going to touch this later on, so I'm going to be brief. Have this sort of archaic way of teaching, which is to recite the books, the I don't the school books, and they just recite lessons. Some of them have personal experience, and they add that to the lesson, but it follows very much a formula. And some teachers are better to disguise that, like they can make it fun, they are more engaging, but ultimately it's always the same formula. And the problem with teaching, in my opinion, is that formula is already outdated because it needs to be pre-approved by a committee, and if it worked last year it works this year. So it felt really annoying to me that me and my brother are 6 years apart, and I was learning the same things in let's say in English and science that he was. And that made little sense to me because things evolve. Like even language evolves, and they were just so archaic that education didn't evolve with it. And teachers kind of like, again, there are good teachers that really engage with a student. This was in university. I had this guy who was um, a theory of image teacher. He basically wanted to explain to you the meaning of images throughout history. And he was he was a teacher with a big T, at a capital T, right? This guy studied for that job. He spent his whole life for that job. He was this little tiny scholarly man. If you can imagine the most teacher-esque cliche, he was all of them, with the suspenders, with the big glasses, neat hair, all that shit. And he basically, one of the lessons was basically to teach us the symbolism behind the film Matrix, and there's a lot of shit to unpack there. And he went step by step, and he taught us now is a relatively rudimentary thing, which is Plato's cavern, which is if you spend your whole life in a cavern looking at a wall with people projecting images on it, you believe that is your entire reality. And if you ever have a chance to leave the cavern and see the beauty of the real world, it's so shocking to you that you return into the safety of the cavern, which is the allegory Matrix was going through. Like Neo was...
All right, the red pill and the blue pill, right?
Where he was presented with the world of New York in 1999. That was his cavern. That was the image that was projected on him. And then the guy Morpheus presented him with a choice to leave the cavern, and Neo accepted. And immediately he went to the outside world, which was goddamn awful, and he wanted to go back, which he couldn't. And that symbol, he taught me a lot of shit in that class, and I loved every single word because he was a good teacher. And I'm pretty sure he said that lecture to every other class, to every other students, and to every year. But he was really good at explaining. And one thing that really shocked me about that teacher is that motherfucker spoke every language. In university, it's common to have foreign students in. And I remember, like, the teacher was speaking to one student at a time, and then there was this foreign student, like, so you're from where? You're from Chechnya. Oh, I spent a brief summer there. And then he starts speaking Chechenian with the guy. I was like, what the fuck? And he then turns to a Romanian. Oh, Romania, yes, I believe I once read a newspaper in the bathroom. And then he started speaking Romanian with the dude. And yeah. And he spoke Latin, and he spoke English, French, German, and all that shit. I was like, God damn, this guy really enjoys teaching, and I love those teachers, but they are rare. And right. What I most experienced and what I was most frustrating was those teachers that basically just gave you the same project that they gave every year, that they grade. Basically, they don't give you the max grade even if your work merits it. They also don't give you a negative grade because that gives them more work next year. So this was in art and in design. This happened a lot where teachers kind of just push students along the automatic roller way. I'm forgetting the name of like the automatic whatever. The tarmac of students just keep going and going, and the teachers just want to push and not deal with them. So the grade, the grades were always very similar, like from between 10, which is the passing grade in Portugal, to 13, 14, which is an average grade as well. It's like C. I don't know if a C plus is a good grade.
Just for context, we usually grade it from 0 to 20. I guess 0 to 20. Yeah. 0 is possible. I don't know how other grading system work, but yeah, that's how it is here.
Yeah,
I mean, dude, you're speaking. There are already so many more things that I didn't prepare that I want to talk about. I think like this is by far would be the biggest strength in the. Like I'll just try to keep it brief, otherwise I just won't stop talking. I would have enough to speak for like 2 podcasts probably. But yeah, like just very briefly on the things you mentioned, I mean on the teachers and the difference in teacher quality, I think there is not a proper teacher to train teachers. The way this is done today is, Sev, you're good at art? Let's make you an art teacher. I mean, there is no training of pedagogical skills whatsoever. They don't prepare you how to transfer information. Just because you know one subject does not mean you know how to teach that subject or transfer that information. That is another skill, and there is no focus on it by the system. Like there is no teacher ever has been prepared before being a teacher unless that person did it on their own outside. So the good teachers are probably good because they made an extra effort outside of what is demanded of them.
Sure.
So, and it's really tiring to have a lot of like these teachers are experts in their field, but they're shit at explaining things. They're
Yeah,
just awkward
two of the
schmucks that
worst teachers I've had, and
are
for
probably the
different.
best experts.
No, one of them was, but two of
Mm.
the worst teachers I've had. One was this sort of, I don't know. She was a brand new teacher. I think she was starting her career, and she really was she was awful. Like she'd sit down, she would read the chapters of the book she had to teach us. She had like PowerPoint presentations full of text where she would just read verbatim what she wrote on the text on the wall, and it was so. And she was also very annoying in terms of lecturing the students, like trying teaching. She was speaking to the students as if they were children. Like we were in a university, we are barely younger than her, but she was kept pushing us down, trying to. Oh, you're not children. You shouldn't talk. You shouldn't talk sideways. Oh, you're not children. You should be on time and all that shit. And to be honest, that shit is just condescending. And what happens, obviously, is that people will rebel against it. The more you push someone to not do something, the more he's inclined to do it because he wants to annoy you because you're an asshole.
Right.
So without any sort of tact to how to handle students, this teacher just boiled herself down to as an exposition dump expert. She just kept reading text after text and assuming this is the best way for students to captivate or to retain information, which wasn't. It was the worst teacher I've had.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so, I mean, in regards to that, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say opposite to that was the teacher which was an actual expert in the field. He was really good at the work he did. He had a huge portfolio he has a huge career and a huge portfolio, but he was known to being the friendly teacher, the teacher who was out with the students. Yeah, I'm out here for you. And he was also the sort of guy who he went, when there's a student party, he showed up, like he got drunk.
Okay. No, I don't know that. I have no idea what you're talking about. That Jesus. Never happened.
Yeah, but that was another example. Like you have the teacher who's a friend, and because he's a friend, he doesn't really teach as much as he's trying to, be social. And he was an awful teacher because, he just didn't have the pedigree to relate information. Again, we didn't retain anything because he's trying to be cool or whatever. And this was a bad teacher, not only because he went to parties and sometimes he would even miss class because of them, but also because he ended up getting his student pregnant. So you can see see the caliber.
Would make for a good TV show, probably, that teacher.
Oh, for sure. He was he wanted to be a rock star.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it does from what you're explaining.
Yeah.
That's definitely what a rock star would do. Get a student pregnant, get drunk on student parties. Yeah. That sounds right. That sounds about right. But regarding this, you mentioned specifically the first teacher. I mean, it's not entirely her fault. There was no preparation on the part of the school or university or whatever. And by the way, just for context, I did take a course to be a CELTA teacher, which is an English teacher for adults. And there's a lot of material behind being a teacher. There's a lot of methodology. It takes time to study just that. I mean, the way this was done is a full-time kind of job for a month. So this was 5 days a week, full-time from like 9 to 5, and then you had homework to do. So it take and maybe that's too short because there was so much information we just couldn't go through. So I just want to say that being a teacher actually should take more work on the aspect of methodology of teaching and all that. And none of this is done, as far as I know, anywhere, except maybe specialized, high-end, like teaching English CELTA courses and stuff. And I would say that I'm better than average now. And before I was just a little shit who would probably not know anything. Not that I'm saying that I know a lot today because I didn't practice that much. I tried teaching for like 2 years and then I stopped. But there's a lot behind it. It's hard. It's not easy. And some things are counterintuitive. And then you have every student is an individual, and then you have to cater to that and you have to adapt, So it's not like it's you can just go by the book. But yeah, anyway, I want to say that one of the issues is that no teacher is prepared in nowadays, and that's That's just wrong. It's not right. You shouldn't have just an expert in your field rather than a proper teacher. You could get someone who's good at teaching and get them to learn that subject. That teacher will probably be better at explaining
Yeah,
things to you than
I knew
anyone
an
who's an
example of
expert in the
that
field.
too. A guy who's just good at communicating to the students. But and I in my school, I knew a teacher that was basically jumped from. He was like the substitute teacher. He would jump from class to class, but he would always be good at it. Yeah,
Right.
exactly
Yeah, it's
because
just
he had the
transmitting information.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
just knew how to pass it.
Mm-hmm.
Just
And
to finish it off about my experience,
mhm.
because it was design and because design is subjective, art evolves quicker than most fields, I would say. So it changes from year to year. It's also the grading is very subjective. I mean, how do you get more grades for using red instead of green? That sort of conversation. And therefore, I learned remarkably little in university. Remarkably little. Even things that would prepare me to the real world, such as learning how to make a presentation for a client, learning how to prepare a script for a movie, learning how to edit sound. All that shit was so, or because I was in multimedia design, and one of the key things you would imagine that I would learn was to make a website. The school was so poor at teaching any of those things that I learned more in my high school, and I learned more from my friends and than I did from what the school actually gave me. That's my biggest focus. What I learned actually in university was to learn for myself, which is probably the main takeaway that I wanted to give in this episode, and why I think I'm going to, after this, just let you speak. Is that honestly, we live in a world right now where all the information we want is available through your phone. And sometimes there's too much information, and often the information is wrong, but it is there. You should learn to teach how to find that information. How you need to. That's what you need to learn in universities, to find the right sources, to find the right techniques, to find the right voice that you can extrapolate from. Like I'm going to use the example of writing. Not all writers write the same way. And if I want to become a writer myself, and if I follow the teachings of someone who isn't like me, I might not understand. I might not follow writing. I was like, oh, I don't get this. This doesn't work for me. This is bad. But it doesn't mean that what this person is saying is wrong. It just means it is not for me. You have to learn to find what is right for yourself and what works for you. Also, in case of university, I think the big thing we're going to complain about later is that it doesn't teach you about real world application. It teaches you theories, and it doesn't teach you about finances. It doesn't teach you how to sell projects to clients, which for me as a designer is paramount. And it didn't really teach us about how much your work is worth, how much it can.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah.
How much it evolves, and how much you're paying and your hours evolve with it. How much do you gain per hour? How much should you spend on a client? How do you, for example, as a designer, I make a project. I spend, let's say, 3 hours making a logo for a client, and I build this client for 3 hours. The client looks at it and says, very good, but I want you to change a few things. Do you then bill them the subsequent hours of changing or not? Or does it come free after the initial 3 hours of work? I mean, you might say, obviously, you bill them for the extra hours, but it might reach an unsurmountable amount. It also creates this dynamic, like you're giving the client something that is broken so that you can get paid more. Kind of like the car mechanic idea. Like each time you bring your car to a mechanic, you leave there with a new problem, and then you go there again, and you get this endless revenue, and your reputation might be hampered by it. So it happens a lot that you present this logo for 3 hours of work, and then you spend 2 days working just to fix it. And you come to this, should I bill him? Should I not? And all those things you don't learn. You don't know. You just have to go by ear. And it is incredibly frustrating and I feel like that happens because, again, the academic teachings of a university are honestly not updated to the real world. I will then present like other modules of education in other countries that I think would work really well. But for now,
Oh,
it's back to you, Mr. J.
okay. I'm very curious to hear because I'm not actually that familiar with other country systems. Although I did travel a bit, but yeah, I guess I didn't delve into that too much. Um, I mean, there are a lot of very good points. I think that this can be talked at length, but I
For sure.
guess we'll leave those topics as they are. I'll just go back a little bit to you mentioned on memorization. Yeah, like the system nowadays is just. I mean, this access to information that you mentioned, this is a fairly new thing. It's what maybe 20, 10 years that is so everything is so accessible to us. This is a very new thing, and yeah, this is just an aspect of society that would not evolve that fast. I don't know the reasons for this, whether it's political, whether it's financial, or just general lack of interest. I have no clue, but obviously it's fallen behind because the information that people had accessible before, oh, we have to go to a library to find this book that we need. Like, library? Are you kidding me? Just go online, man, look it up. You have not just the book, but then you have 20,000 articles on the subject by other people and probably new research documents, all of that was probably inaccessible to general folk before, unless you subscribe to some magazine or something. So yeah, anyway, like lack of innovation or change or adaptation to the new world, so to speak, world of information. And you mentioned a very good point that university provides, perhaps discipline and networking. They're valuable, but couldn't there be other ways to get these valuable,
Yeah.
resources otherwise that you wouldn't have to pay like so many fees yearly and probably be living in a different city where you have to pay rent. I mean, it's a huge cost. It's a business, man. University is a business, really.
Yeah. Cities,
And it's
some cities live off of it, like
right.
mine did.
And you have I mean, it's a factory for churning out employees pretty much because I mean, you just do what you're told, right? You just do. You just like put your hand down, and you kind of there's. I mean, maybe in art there's more creativity, but if you, as
You'd
you
be
told me, there's a lot of
surprised.
repetition.
Yeah.
If you told me there's a lot of repetition, then I doubt that. Yeah. So that is unfortunate that you have a creative field that has been devoid of all creativity.
Yeah.
But those aspects are important. Yeah, you gotta have the right stroke for painting or whatever. You have to do those things. But
Yeah, the analogy would
sounds like
be like in art, in actual art, not design. Like if you want to practice drawing, you have to draw the same shit a lot. That's why every single art course starts with you drawing chairs or drawing fruits or whatever. And you do that not once, not twice, but you probably do it about 50 times before it soaks in. So yeah, there's not creativity in it. You're just trying to teach you the technique. And I understand that. To give the counterpoint to why education feels like repetition nonstop is because I believe that there is some worth in you developing your brain and through repetition. Like if sometimes there is this conversation about that boomers say that we're too dependent on our phones. You need to look at your phone to remember your own name. Okay, yeah, sure. But there is a certain thing where people use the phones to do basic math. People need their phones to, I don't know, there is this dependency of information because we don't need to remember it anymore. So we just kind of default everything to the phone. And I do think that it is important for you to retain something. And you retain something through more oftenly through repetition.
right. I mean, there are two quick points there. I mean, one, I do feel that the fact that we use phones to store information rather than our brains is a good thing because
Same.
fundamentally phones are a better store of information than our brains. Our brains are used to solve complex issues, something that a paper and a computer cannot do. I mean, we make quick decisions based on information we have. We use intuition. Paper or computers cannot do that. As far as I know, I don't know. Like you can talk to me about AI and stuff, but yeah, there are some issues that just computers are not very good at solving, but humans are. Yeah, I can't think of anything. I'm sure there are. You can look it up. Yeah, but so we're not meant for like stupid memorization. Like for example, if you're in a real job, just an example, would you and you have something, a critical, point of I don't know, a critical solution you must solve, and it's very important that you do not make a mistake. Would you purposefully avoid looking at a manual because you cannot consult manuals and you must only use your memory? I mean, this is the most retarded thing ever. This completely does not translate from education to a workplace. Like in school, you have to memorize and then just, you know, vomit that information out. Whereas if you're at a real job, like, no, I better double check that because I'm not absolutely sure. I mean, this is just retarded.
To prove a counterpoint to that. Again, I agree with most of what you're saying, but there is a question of efficiency. If you know something, you're a better worker than that one that needs to look things up. That's why specialization is important. Like a person who's been working 10 years in a company is more valuable than a hotshot, new prospect that just came in through the door. The hotshot might be really good, but just because he needs to learn the way things go, he's not as valuable as that 10-year-old worker. That's the only thing that comes to mind.
Dude, that's a great point, but I think that should not be the focus of education because that comes with experience anyway. I know like certain professions, like a doctor, it just takes forever for them they never finish studying, do they? It's just all the time. I mean, I it would be better to have a doctor to have his opinion on this or hers because I just don't know. But I wonder if like, and you are specialized, you don't know all the areas, and of course you go to a doctor, I have this problem, and the doctor remembers and knows what to do. But then you have, this varies depending on the doctor. There is no standardization. I mean, I don't know, this is not something I could get into too much because I don't know in certain
I see what you mean, yeah,
professions. But yeah, just to finish my point, in general, I don't think this should be the focus of a university, just dumb memorization, because it comes from experience, and more importantly, purposeful experience. And that because the way we study in university or in school is you're just given a tool, like, this is a hammer. You smack with it. But why would I need a hammer? You don't know. How about you? Hey, look, you have a shelf. Figure out. But what do I do? I don't know. Well, here are a bunch of tools. Choose one, and then you're given a hammer. You're given a saw. I don't know. You're given some tissues to cry yourself to sleep.
Design,
I don't know.
You can stretch that analogy further, where the university gives you the hammer, and everyone tries to think so cleverly out the box that they hold the hammer by the wrong end and try to say it's art. That was all I had to say. That happens a lot. People misuse something because they feel like they're being clever about it. Yeah,
that's good, man. Yeah. That's good.
Sometimes fashion doesn't equal to function.
Right, and perhaps you're more than a rant, just a solution, sort of. But I think rather than subjects in school, university, it would be more interesting to actually give students some low priority real life problems. For example, I don't know, you have your local bakery shop that has trouble with their routes. I don't know, they have to deliver bread, but their route is not efficient. They're spending a lot of gasoline and they would like to change that. They don't know what to do. I don't know, get a bunch of students and present the problem. They do it over a year. They figure out all the different ways in which they can solve the problem. What are the savings? I don't know. Of course, this is an engineering issue because I'm biased. That's what I studied. But this is an example. I don't know. Maybe it's free. I mean, look, you already pay for school. You already pay for university. Your taxes pay for it. Why not actually have some financial good use out of it to random people? Or you can have large corporations that have some low priority issues. When I mean low priority, I mean that is not, time critical. It does not have to be now, And there's a lot of research projects that are just kind of in a limbo somewhere. Nobody cares about it. Nobody thinks about it. It's just not a priority, or maybe it's not very interesting. Whatever. Or maybe it's not the right time. You just dump it onto students and university. They actually have some use for society, and they would feel some
involved in the community, I suppose.
Involvement and actual satisfaction from doing something worthwhile.
That was something I was going to touch on my rant earlier, which is one of the solutions, probably, especially in design. Like, we're given so many theoretical problems. I would see, like, as a teacher, I would challenge my students not only to create a project, but to sell it, to actually make money out of it, to teach them to be entrepreneurs. And I would guide them in the process of selling their art more so than actually the art itself. And because that application to real life, that thing of being involved in something that has effect in the world around you, is a much more powerful tool of teaching than just going over problem A, problem B, trying to solve math problems about how many melons Susie has. That shit means nothing.
That doesn't sound right. Sorry, I got distracted.
No,
what were you talking about?
Dude, let go of
Susie's melons.
No.
You should introduce me to her.
I should have used another fruit. About Jonathan's melons. There you go. How about that?
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah. Or Jonathan's durians. Yeah. I hope somebody gets that reference. Somebody in a very small group.
Yes, very
no,
good.
No. It's a friend who's called Jonathan, and he's from Malaysia, where there's a lot of durian. Hi, John.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just a short shout out, I guess. Oh man, I completely got lost.
Susie's melons did it for you. We're talking about applications to the real world, so you be more involved. I don't know if that helps you.
Yeah, just give me a second to track back. I was talking research and stuff for students, right? Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And I wanted to say something else. Like the students coming, say you put these projects up to them in high school. Like they come out of high school, they already have a CV, dude. Mm-hmm. Like what do you think is more worthwhile? Oh, I have a degree. I finished school in this place this time. Like, who looks at it? Nobody cares. Do they care what you studied there, what you did? Nobody cares what you did. You just finished it. It's just that's just the way it's standardized. You know, it's just a stamp of approval. It's like, yep, this milk is good until whatever date. But imagine you actually solve the issues. Like, I don't know, the local students, we solved the local city traffic issues. There was a problem with the way the traffic worked in the city. There was some streets that were always, overburdened, and some were not, and they presented a project. Dude, how much more worthwhile would that be, like, to anyone who would look at that person? That's actually something, of value, rather.
As a counterpoint, again, playing devil's advocate, don't sue me. Is there enough? Because you think about the amount of students there are per school, per city. So there are, like, let's say 700 students in one school, and there's like 4 schools in the city. How many problems does that city have that students can help participate in? How feasible can that be to last for a whole year as a teaching method? There might be a problem of sometimes there just isn't enough for everyone. So you gotta fill the time somehow. We gotta teach them something.
No, I agree. There are a lot of practical issues here, but you would have to get into it and see how it goes and then adapt, because you cannot make all the predictions. You don't know how much interest there would be. I mean, for example, like as I mentioned, usually the tax euro or dollar, whatever, pays for the public school system, right? I mean, you could have an incentive for, like, a tax incentive for certain companies to give part of their money to schools in exchange for projects. I mean, that could be an incentive, and then you would see where it goes from there, if there's any take on it or not. Of course,
you're kind of touching on the education system that I will mention briefly forward, which is the Swiss model, where the students then work alongside professionals in their work. So you might not have that student fixing the traffic problem, but you'll have a student actually involved in projects that have real world application, which is, I think,
that would shadow or something.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great idea. Maybe maybe I just didn't care enough because I was so angry. I didn't care to look up the different systems that there are in the world.
It's just funny that you came to the conclusion that other people already thought of,
yes,
which means that there is some merit to it.
Of course, because, I mean, students are a resource, and we're kind of wasting them on silly silly, futile problems, and they are futile. It's because it's like, oh, dig this hole. Oh, now fill it up. I mean, because it's just didactical. It's like, oh, well, you learned how to use a shovel, great. But what was the use of this exercise? There was no use. You did some physical exercise. You got some muscle. I don't know. You lost some breath. Now you burned some energy. You gotta eat. Great. But other than that, there was nothing produced. And I think that's a huge issue. I mean, the people are a huge resource, and you could put them to much better use. And some people say, "Oh, that's exploiting children." Well, sure, why not? If it's good for them and for us, sure, man, why not? I had this. This is just again another aside, but I was in Vietnam teaching English, and it is kind of very authority based the way things work. Like I'm the big dog. I make decisions. You stay quiet. And that's how it felt, at least. And there was this other teacher from Australia, and he had been doing this for a while, and he'd been, sort of teaching teachers as well. And he had his personal project that he wanted to do. He wanted, this was very young children, by the way. This is like 4 to 10 years old, whatever. And he wanted this teacher wanted his own project. He wanted to encourage young kids to work with vegetables and flowers and plants and all that stuff, so that they actually learn stuff like working with dirt and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is beyond English, just but perhaps you could use it in combination with English. But he wanted kids to do this stuff, and he proposed this idea this was a personal project. He didn't care if he made money out of it, and he proposed it to the boss of this school. And he said, dude, his jaw dropped, because he realized that I proposed to him a legal way to exploit children's work. You could actually grow vegetables and then use them in school or whatever for food. And he was like, "Oh,
children
that is school
working?
Wait for free, and I can do it."
Grasp.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, but did they actually do it?
No, they didn't go through.
But, I mean, they were offended. I mean, I might have misinterpreted you, but they were offended by the idea of putting children to work, I assume.
No, the boss just liked the idea,
okay.
But it's a process, and then the guy who was proposing the ideas, they had some disagreements on other things, and he just left. So that didn't go through. But I mean, this is a great example. I mean, I don't know. Do you have a moral issue with a kid using like plants and stuff to learn how to work with them?
To be honest, I don't have an issue if a kid was working in a factory. I don't give a fuck. but I do. I can imagine the conversation of some parents saying, "My child in the dirt," gasp. I can imagine some parents feeling that like their children are entitled to have a childhood, not work. They're children after all. They should not be in such endeavors. I know these sort of people.
Right. But I do think it's a matter of perspective. But because I mean, children are working at school. It's just not productive, and so I just see a little argument for not making work that is productive. Of course, you don't set it up as you do a corporation where you have this time. You wouldn't be so strict about it. It's still learning.
There's an aspect here where we could have a lawyer speak about the moral efficacies of having a child make money for a school, because or make money for a society. Is that good? Is that evil? Is that bad? Because technically, the child's not being paid. If anything, she's the one. Dude, she's the one paying for it.
Sorry, I don't accept that argument, because the children's parents are probably paying for them to study.
Yeah.
They are spending money, so why not have that being financed by something else they would be productive? What's the word? Actors or whatever.
Yeah.
In that system where they actually produce the value that is being spent on them. Like, why not? I don't see an issue with that. I think it's a good thing. But
that is a question I genuinely wish. I genuinely want to see answers in the comments below, because this is a good topic of, should we put children to work? Those little bastards had enough good times with Fortnite or whatever.
Dude, they're living long enough lives. I mean, it's time to give something back.
Those moochers, those bastards.
Yeah, but a very interesting point. Maybe we should get some lawyer someday and have a chat. Who knows? Who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah, but again, like this. I think that yeah, definitely our podcast should change into Artistry Podcast and Tangents. Like that's more.
That is how most
That's
art
what
is
we do.
made.
Yeah,
That
very
is how
good
most
point.
art
There
is
you
made.
go. Yeah, I walked into that myself, and I didn't do it on purpose.
Yeah,
Yep,
I mean, the whole thing about artistry is the wordplay of art is try, and what is trying if not going in tangents?
Dude, let's do another aside. Let's do another tangent. Yesterday, I met a few dudes, and this one guy, he saw our post of one of our podcasts, and he was like making fun of me. Oh, well, to other people because they didn't know that I have a podcast. Like, oh, he was reading out loud, like, oh, who is this guy? What does he do? All this bullcrap. And then, oh, look at this. So one question I always had. So he was pretty much going on a rant with with me as a accomplice, right? Because people didn't know that this was my podcast or our podcast, and he was like, "Oh, dude, one thing I don't understand. Look, it's called Artistry Podcast, but I don't get it. Is it artistry or is it artistry?" And I look at him like, "Yeah, that's right." I look at him. I mean, that's right. And then he goes on a rant, and then 2 minutes later, oh shit. It is Artistry. They have it on the podcast. It's written here.
Gotcha, motherfucker.
Yeah. This is to you if you're still listening. I fucking gotcha.
Yeah, he likes to go by Samurai, by the way. That's his nickname. I don't know how it happened. So there you go.
Samurai?
There you
what
go.
Is it? It's Samurai? Or is that a Russian Sam? I don't get it. Fuck you.
Well, we just lost a listener. There we go.
Well, I guess we should try better next time.
Yeah. Oh, man. Oh, shit. Yeah, I'm distracted again. I can't stay focused today, huh? I guess this topic does make me a little angry, like just education. Maybe I'm just a little butthurt.
Should we start reaching up to our conclusions?
Yeah. I mean, that's good. Just final thoughts. Any takeaways?
I mean, everything you said, I agreed upon. Like, there is wiggle room for interpretation. There's wiggle room for maybe you're being a bit harsh, and you can moderate some of the things you said too. But ultimately, I feel like what we're saying is not new. Everyone feels the same way. The frustrating part comes with nothing changes. And the problem keeps going on year after year, and we keep having the same conversation. Our students should learn how to do the IRS. Our students should learn how to do taxes. Our students should learn how to handle money and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, they should. Then why don't we? There are too few actually classes that actually teach that in the world. Not just in school, in the world that recognize the problem and they took steps to fixing it. But these are schools usually in high pedigree schools like Oxford's and all that sort of shit, that they recognize that there's a problem need fixing, and it's not a model that has been applied to every school. So there's still a long way to go, probably. However, I did want to touch on a few models that I really enjoyed hearing. I already talked about the Swiss model, where the students spend, I don't know if it's a year or if it's a summer. I think it's a summer. Instead of going on summer vacation, they spend the summer with a professional through their works. And my mother, this was through my mother, by the way. So I'm not exactly sure if what she told me is 100% legit or if she just embellished it for me. Which is that most people in Switzerland have this sort of double profession thing. They have their main profession, and then they have this side gig that they can do if they ever feel like it. More like a rentable hobby. Like, you have this cop who can also be an artist. You have a carpenter who's actually also an engineer. Like, they have these sort of double jobs going on because of this school endeavor. Like, they from early on they decided, I wanted to be a soccer player. But after the summer where they worked in an association, they're like, maybe soccer player isn't for me. So they shifted their attention to let's say accounting. So this guy grew up being an accountant, But he also does sports. Like he can become a sports teacher, a personal trainer, or whatever, just because of that soccer background, which is valuable for his portfolio and for his CV. Like I really liked that perspective, and I think it has a lot of applicability to the way society has evolved since then. There's also the Sweden version, the Swiss in Sweden, the Swedish version, which is very similar as well, where instead of like you finish high school, I'm probably going to butcher this. If there are Swedish people or Swiss people that can correct me in the comments, again, please do. But supposedly after high school, you have this year of internship. And this year of internship is not always related to the degree that you are studying, but it's always related to like helping community or helping a business or whatever. So you actually have, again, a real world applicability to the things you are learning. And then you can decide to pursue that endeavor or, go into university and study something else. I think it's like that. I might be completely wrong, and I'm sorry if I am. But the main premise here is having that push into the workforce in a safe environment where you can learn without fearing going bankrupt or fearing doing something that is absolutely devastating. Imagine if you want to be a doctor and you spend an intern as a doctor's apprentice or whatever. You're not going to be performing heart surgery, right? You're not going to be assisting on that, but there's still a lot of valuable experience, because ultimately, and I don't think we spoke about this, or at least not enough, you learn more in 1 week of working at your job than in 3 years of university.
Easily. Yeah, we definitely did not speak about that.
Yeah. Like I studied for 4 years in a university. Before that, I studied, I think, 2 more years, and always in design. And I consider myself competent. I'm not exactly the best, but I'm competent at what I do. And as soon as I hit my work spot, I work in a national newspaper, I was so overwhelmed with information that in the first weeks, I feel like I evolved tremendously. I went from, because I had the opinions of an actual designer with me. And I don't want to badmouth teachers, not saying that they're not actual designers, but one thing is teaching. Unfortunately, one thing is teaching, the other thing is having an actual professional tell you, yeah, but this is how we do it in the real world. And that was so invaluable. And I was also lucky that the guy who taught me in the newspaper is a really, really good designer and a really good teacher. Like he was very patient, and he had this I think we've talked about in previous podcasts, where not only did he say, "Hey, João, do this," but he also, João is my name in case people forget. I'm João Orset. Hey, João, do this. And if I do something wrong, he didn't say, "That's wrong." He would say, "That's interesting. I would maybe try doing this as well, but don't throw that away. Let's see if we can change something." He didn't try to mold me in his vision. He tried to guide me to my own right answer, and that is such a good teacher to have. And and I think that's a good attribute for teachers to have in general, not to mold the students, but to help them find their answer. That is my final thought.
I mean, that I really want to take that final thought about teachers being guides rather than whatever teacher means to you. But yeah, they're guides. They just help you along the path. They're walking alongside you. They're not actually telling you what to do. That's a very good point. And on my end, I mean, I just want to hop back onto, there is some middle ground. I'm not sure what it is. Of course, the solution I presented, or one of the ideas I presented, is not the best one, but there is some middle ground where you just diverge certain financing from government research or whatever corporate research into schools as a way to allow, whether it's high school or university students, to make some value on their studies, like personal value, and also to, I don't know, pay for their scholarships or whatever. I mean, I think that's a great idea, but there, of course, there's some tiny issues with that. I probably definitely didn't think about, like, oh, there's this legal issue, and of course there are issues, but there is some middle ground where we can go in that direction, or maybe something completely different, but where the core idea of making meaningful work at school rather than just didactical futile work such as digging a hole and filling it back up again. Oh, yeah, I learned how to use a shuffle. I know this tool now. What do I do with it? Oh, you go to anyway. That's kind of not to be too condescending there at the end, but that's the point. I think there's some middle ground, some solutions, some things that definitely has to evolve the education system because it's been left behind. That's what I think. I mean, generally speaking.
Also, if the solutions that we like, I'm very interested to hear people say about the Swedish and the Sweden models. Like, if you have went through them, do you think they're good? Perhaps, or do you actually you want to argue and say, actually, that shit don't work? I spent a year of my life following this asshole, and he taught me nothing. I mean, we talked about complacency of teachers, but maybe there's complacency of professionals as well. I just don't know. Maybe people maybe there's a question to be had about maybe the problem isn't the teaching community. Maybe the problem is that society in general doesn't treat students as a valuable asset. And there's a whole topic to explore there, and I'm really interested to hear personal thoughts and what anyone has to say about it. I'll be checking the comments and hoping to have some feedback.
Yep, food for thought. And so yeah, guys, make sure to leave some comments, press that like button, and subscribe. Whatever you do on Spotify, because we have 7 viewers on Spotify. Hi guys. Yeah. Yeah, but as always, we'll leave some links in the description and the timestamps. I am Jay.
I'm Sev.
Artistry Podcast.
Signing off.